Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Downer Industry Day. My name's Rob Harrison. I'm actually going to just start with something that I grew up with, telling that I'd have 15 minutes of fame on TV at some time in my life. I think in the last 3 weeks, I think I've definitely overdosed on that fame of being able to be sat on a screen talking to somebody else. Our only slight difficulty here, and I apologise that for today, but the events of where we are is that I can't see you and I can't touch you. That touching part probably sounds a little bit wrong, but hopefully you'll get the idea of where we are. So my name's Rob Harrison. I'm the project director for the Waurn Ponds line upgrade. Thanks for joining us today. What I'm looking for today is actually just to push out something about the project, where we are in the project. And I'm really keen, even on a personal note, you'll obviously hear I'm not from these parts, I'm from the UK. Downer, the project, and myself in particular, is really looking to see what capability and capacity we have in the supply chain. I've got all of my senior team here today, including the client as well, very importantly. And we're going to run through a short presentation about the project, who we are, where we are, what we're doing, and then most importantly, how we can get you guys engaged with us on the project. So a little piece about Downer. For those of you who don't know about Downer, Downer's listed on the ASX, one of the biggest companies in Australia. Our portfolio is very broad, from services, from roads, airports, hospitality, and the parts. It's one of those companies that everybody seems to know but doesn't know. But we're around you all the time. Spotless is one of our companies that do most of the sporting facilities in and around Australia. And those of you in Sydney or here in Melbourne, we're involved with Yarra Trams and Sydney Trains. So we're affecting your life most of the days, and yeah, we're here for you. We employ around 53,000 people. So again, that might also be a shock to some of you online, which puts us among some of the biggest companies in Australia. Where we are at the moment in terms of what we're doing, this project is going to be run out of the southern region in joint venture with our rail signalling business. Both of those businesses actually sit within a division called Transport Projects, which is part of Downer. That Transport Projects division sits in what they call Australia Operations. So Downer is divided into two, Australia Operations and New Zealand Operations. We've been awarded the project for the Waurn Ponds line upgrade, and that's where we're now moving into the. We've moved into the design phase and actually looking to move into the delivery phase. But with that, we're doing with a purpose. Our purpose is to create and sustain a modern environment by building a trusted relationship with our customers. We also always demonstrate our promise to work closely with our customers, help them succeed. And it's built on 4 pillars that hopefully you can see on your screen at the moment. It starts with safety, but actually I'm going to rename that zero harm, because that also encompasses environment and sustainability, and that's extremely important to myself. Delivery in how we build that trust in delivering on our promises. How we collaborate, and that's both upstream and downstream. So obviously our clients are very important, but to me, the people that is going to deliver this is my supply chain. So how we work and how we develop that relationship together is extremely important to me. And then another one that I really enjoy is thought leadership. Thought leadership is, for me, is about challenging the norm, always looking to do something a little bit extra, add that extra value. People sometimes get that confused with cost. It's not cost, it's values, how we can deliver something more. I mentioned one of the most important people to me is our client. Our client is Rail Projects Victoria, which is a government body responsible for the Regional Rail Revival Programme, which Waurn Ponds line upgrade is one of the key projects in that programme of works. RPV have engaged Downer on on their behalf, on behalf of the state, to complete a design and construct project to deliver that project. Other major stakeholders that we're delivering for, I call it a two-sided triangle, but we have V-Line, who's a major stakeholder for the Warrnable Line upgrade project, and the accredited rail operator currently on that line. Again, coming back to our pillars, we all need to work really collaboratively together. A demonstration of that is that today our client is actually going to join us on this industry day, and I'm about to hand over to him. His name's Liam Mills, so he's my opposite project director for Regional Rail Victoria, and he'll run through a quick presentation about how this project sits in at a state level, a government level. So I'll pass over now to Liam.
Hello all, sorry for that slight delay, just navigating my way around this new system and making sure I'm off mute so I don't look like someone who doesn't know how to operate the system. So again, just to reiterate Rob's initial presentation is that we thank you for making the time today to come along to this. This is obviously a very important project for the state. So I'll just give you a little bit of a brief rundown before I hand back to Dano, who will go into a bit more detail about what it is that they will be delivering as contracted by the state. So first of all, thank you again for logging in. As Rob said, my name's Liam Mills. I'm the acting project director for the project, which is for both the Geelong and Warrnable line upgrades. And so I suppose the purpose of today is to give you a bit of information about RPV in particular, and the project from RPV's perspective before Dana goes into a bit more detail. So if I move on to the next slide, you'll see, I suppose, a drawing that sort of outlines where RPV fits into the DOT family. So we work for the Department of Transport. You can see them at the top of the chart, which is a Victorian Government body responsible for planning, designing and overseeing our integrated network of roads and rail. So as you can see there's quite a number of different bodies that sit under the Office of Director General that report into Department of Transport. So Rail Projects Victoria is responsible for a number of different projects, including, obviously, as many of you would know, we started out as Melbourne Metro Rail Authority and then became Rail Projects Victoria. So obviously our first project was the Metro Tunnel. We're also responsible for, obviously, Regional Rail Revival, of which the Warrnable and Geelong line upgrades sits into that portfolio, and as well as the future Melbourne Airport Rail projects and fast rail between Geelong and Melbourne, which are both very important projects for this particular region as well. So we work together with other agencies in designing and delivering infrastructure for the states, including bodies such as V-Line and VicTrack as well. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a snapshot as to how RPV fits into the broader picture. So if I keep moving on and on to the next slide will show you a slide of Victoria, and it shows the regional network throughout the state. So just a little bit of background as to the RRR program. It's a $1.7 billion program, which is upgrading every passenger line in Victoria. It's a joint initiative between both the federal and the Victorian state governments. So in terms of the RRR portfolio, there's a number of objectives that are key to the portfolio. So first and foremost, we are about delivering more frequent and reliable train services, as well as better stations across regional Victoria. Obviously, jobs is very important. So one of the key objectives is to create more than 1,000 jobs, as well as, I suppose, to the regional people, and providing opportunities for regional Victorians to get better access to jobs, education, healthcare, housing, and so on and so forth. So obviously, Geelong and Warrnable line upgrades are part of that investment. Now, if I move on into, I suppose, a little bit more of the specifics about why we're here today, which is the Geelong and Warrnable line upgrades. The works for the Geelong and Warrnable line upgrades have been packaged into one contract, which we've engaged Downer to deliver, and that's to enable better coordination between the two projects, given that there's a lot of synergies between obviously the Geelong and Warrnambool line upgrades. In terms of the specifics of the actual project, and I'll touch on in the following slides in a little bit more detail before Downer goes into a lot more detail in subsequent slides. So there's, I suppose, three key parts of the project: signalling upgrade between Waurn Ponds and Warrnambool, a new crossing loop at Waurn, as well as an upgrade to Waurn Ponds Station. That upgrade at Waurn Ponds Station includes a number of features, including an additional platform, duplicated track, pedestrian overpass, extra car parking, as well as better station facilities such as lighting, CCTV and marking machines. So a much improved station at Waurn Ponds at the completion of this project. So in addition to those items, there's also 12 level crossings that are being upgraded as we speak. That's being delivered on our behalf by Beeline, and that will boost safety for both rail passengers as well as road users as well. So that's being delivered as we speak. We move on to the next slide, which goes into a little bit more detail about each of Geelong and Warrnambool individually. So Geelong line upgrade is part of a staged upgrade of Geelong line upgrade. First step, delivering a track duplication between South Geelong and Waurn Ponds, which is to enable more frequent and reliable services for passengers. Stage one, which is part of this particular contract, will deliver Waurn Ponds Station upgrade, as I talked to before, with I suppose the project benefit that we're aiming for out of this is to provide create a more user-friendly, safe and accessible connection between the platforms, along with obviously the reliability that you get out of the second platform, meaning services can recover more quickly from disruptions, which will boost service reliability as well. In terms of car parking, it will be easier for Waurn Ponds passengers to actually find a car park after the project. Obviously, at the moment, there's formal car parking and also some informal car parking, as well as simply some vacant lands, and the number of users that station is using that full allotment. So obviously, by doing this new car parking, we'll get around 120 new car spaces out of the gravel car parking, as well as additional car parking over and above that as well. Touched on a little bit with regards to station facilities before, obviously better lighting, better CCTV, a new drop-off zone, as well as better access to the station car park. And finally, in terms of with regards to Geelong line upgrade that I'd like to sort of touch on, is around stage two. Obviously, at the start of this particular slide, I touched on the fact that this was being delivered as a stage project with obviously this contract including stage one. Stage two includes the planning and development for the Waurn Ponds duplication project, which is basically to duplicate the track between South Geelong and Waurn Ponds, which will have the aim of enabling more frequent and reliable services for passengers along the line. So that's I suppose, the state's long-term plan for the line. Obviously, it's not part of this particular contract, but certainly something to keep an eye out for in the future. If I keep moving along, Warrnambool line upgrade, obviously we kind of use Warrnambool line upgrade as the description for the entire project. Obviously, it is both the Warrnambool line upgrade as well as stage one of the Geelong line upgrade. If we called that the project's name, it would be quite a mouthful every time we use it. So we tend to just call the whole thing as Warrnambool, but it is important to highlight there is two different parts of the project that make up the single contract. So one of the key features of the Warrnambool line upgrade is to enable a fifth return weekday service between Melbourne and Warrnambool. At the moment, there's 4 return services, so this will create a fifth service, which will also have the benefit of boosting reliability for services along the line. That's certainly one of the key aims for the Warrnambool line upgrade specifically. Obviously, stage one of the Geelong line upgrade supports that as well, enabling that fifth service to run. The project itself includes obviously a pretty significant upgrade to the signalling system along the line, and that too will also boost the reliability of services. The crossing loop at Waurn will provide more opportunities for trains to pass each other, both freight and passenger service, and as well as obviously in the event that something needs to be recovered, having that additional passing loop will help that, and so unexpected delays will be able to be resolved more quickly. So that will be a big benefit to Beeline in its operations. And finally, in terms of what it will provide, is also from a freight perspective. The upgraded line will also support rail freight and allow export products to be more quickly and reliability moved to the Port of Melbourne, which will obviously provide generating economic benefits both for the state of Victoria as well as the local region of Geelong and Warrnambool. That's the two parts of the project. Obviously, Dana will go into a little bit more detail in the coming presentations. If I move on to the next slide, it just briefly touches on, obviously, our engagement of Dana at the end of last year, and obviously, as Rob touched on earlier, now into the delivery phase of that contract. In terms of some very high-level program dates that, again, Dana will go into more detail later on. Construction is expected to start in the middle of this year, with targeted completion for late 2021. I think the last slide for me starts talking about, I suppose, one of the main reasons why many of you are here today is around opportunities for local suppliers. So a lot of what I'm going to talk to is described in that slide there. So obviously from a state, RPV on behalf of the state is committed to generating local, social and Aboriginal employment and procurement opportunities, and thus creating economic benefit for the region as a result of the project. So I'm just going to sort of read out some of the key items in that particular bullet point. There's a range of minimum requirements that the state puts on all its contracts, including this one. There's a minimum 90% local content targets as part of the Victorian industry participation policy. There's also a minimum 10% of programs total work hours to be delivered by apprentices, trainees or engineering cadets as part of the major project skills guarantee. And the last one there is the minimum 2.5% Indigenous employment target, which is also a minimum requirement. So also about developing a social procurement compliance plan as part of the Victorian Government social procurement framework. So that's also a reasonably new feature of our contracts that we're imposing on our contractors. Further to that, we have been working with and will continue to work with ICN, the Industry Capability Network, as well as Growth G21 Geelong, so that we can maximise opportunities and benefits of the project. And obviously, we'll continue to work with Dana to identify and build local opportunities and economic benefits into the project, ensuring information about these opportunities are communicated in a timely way through appropriate channels. Some key things to note in that space is that it will cover the type of contractors, skills and jobs required for the works. It's also really important to note what certification is required, e.g. your rail industry worker cards. So that's an important feature to enable you to be able to work in the rail corridor. And also, obviously, the timeframes for those opportunities will be known and when they'll become available. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a snapshot of the supplier opportunities for the project. And obviously, Dana, as I've sort of touched on, will go into more detail about how they're going to go about delivering against those requirements and what that means for you as well.